With mere days till the final episode of the Chibnall era, The Power of the Doctor, I felt it would be appropriate to give my final predictions for the final episode of this run of Doctor Who. So that is what we're going to be doing today. But before we get into it, if you could do me a teeny tiny little favour and click that subscribe button, it would be very much appreciated. We've just hit 16,000 subscribers, which thank you so much for that, it's crazy. We're trying to get to 20,000 by the end of the year, and I still think we could do it with all your support. So yeah, anyone who subscribes would be greatly appreciated. Also go follow me on Twitter if you want to, the link will be in the description below. I also have a PO box, which if you want to send me something to, the card will be on screen in the corner. But with that said, let's get into the video. So the first thing I'm predicting about Power of the Doctor is that we will not see any major deaths, the Doctor of course, notwithstanding. The reasoning for this is because we only really have one companion departure in particular to analyse. Obviously I'm aware that some of the villains might die, but I'm talking main characters as the protagonists. We only have one departure of characters in this era to really go off of, and that was Graham and Ryan's departure in Revolution of the Daleks. Now of course he could deviate from this, but in this instance in particular, the departure was very low-key, very kind of just, oh, okay, I'm going to leave as well then. And I've gone on record as saying I'm not a big fan of that approach, but given all of the pictures we've seen so far, it seems to imply that all the characters survive at least the opening encounter, as we see what I assume the bullet train is the opening encounter, and then we see Dan being dropped off. So I think he's going to get off safe, as I think he is as well, as even though there's been speculation about her being tissue compression eliminated. I think there's been pictures of her in like the final scenes. So to me, I think it's a pretty safe bet that all the main companions are going to survive. Also, just to add to this, we know that Ashad, the lone Cyberman who was previously tissue compression eliminated in the Timeless Children, has survived that somehow and is back to his normal size. So presumably they might be able to use the same trick on Yaz or anyone else who manages to get eliminated by the Master. And as for Dan, they very clearly signposted the Diane relationship, you know, even in Legend of the Sea Devils, him going back to see Diane, which admittedly, if they do kill him off, would add some tragedy to that element that he never got to see Diane again. However, I just can't see it. With the tone of this episode, admittedly it's hard to tell, but it feels like they're going for a lighter tone, sans the last maybe 10 or so minutes where it gets serious and you get the regeneration. That's just my theory anyway. You might get maybe a Vinder death or something like that, because I'm not really sure why else he'd be brought back. Unless it's to reveal that he's like the Doctor's dad or something, which please, for the love of God, don't do that. But yeah, as much as I kind of want companion deaths, because to be honest, I've never really understood the show's aversion to companion deaths. I get that it's a kid's show, but like, one of my constant gripes with the Moffat era, when that was happening, was that he would kill off characters and then revive them, and it was like, you mitigate the impact of death by making it so that they come back 5 minutes later, right? It's something I'm not really a fan of. They haven't done that in this era, admittedly, but we also haven't really had a particularly sort of effective exit, in my opinion. My favourite of a character in terms of an exit would actually be a death. Your mileage may vary as to whether you consider him a main character or not, and that is Eustachius Jericho in Flux. I liked when he gets gobbled up by the Flux facing off against the Sontaran. I quite liked his death. Although, to be fair, as I said, this era kind of lacks those sort of genuine, like, sad moments where someone leaves. So there is a bit of slim picking in that regard. The next thing I want to predict about Power of the Doctor is that we will not, in fact, see the memories. Now, if you've cast your mind all the way back to Flux, a difficult task I know, in Survivors of the Flux we get introduced to the Pocket Watch, which contains the Doctor's memories from when they were the Timeless Child. And it's kind of implied at the end of the Vanquishers that the Doctor stores them away in the TARDIS unless she, quote, really needs them. Now, as much as I think that this should have some sort of resolution, I can't see us getting the full memories that are implied in that story. Frankly, because I just don't think there's enough time for it to be addressed within the story. With everything else this story has given itself to do, I could maybe see some allusions to it, or maybe a scene in which the Doctor goes, oh, I actually don't need the memories, they don't define me, and etc, etc. But I can't see us actually getting those memories because I think even, Chibnall has said himself in Doctor Magazine and things that he has no intention on revealing them. So I'm not counting on us getting that watch open and seeing all the memories, at least for me. Number 3, I think we will see other classic companion cameo. Now obviously we know that Tegan and Ace will appear from the legacy lineup of companions, and we also know through filming images that Graham has some form of cameo, and John Bishop himself, in a recent BBC press release, referenced a companion support group, and there's been a lot of rumours about other companions having minor cameos in said support group. I think it's a pretty safe bet that some other surprises in terms of characters will be a thing. At the very least, Graham, potentially a couple more. If I had to guess, I would say maybe a very brief appearance from Ian Chesterton, maybe on a Skype call or something like that. Possibly Jo Grant as well, given that we know she's also on Earth. But yeah, given the nature of the centenary as a 100th birthday celebration, and knowing that there is, as I said, a companion support group, it makes all the sense in the world to me to have, a couple others show their faces, even if it is just 4 minor cameos, with Ace and Tegan being the main attraction. Kind of following on from that topic, I reckon we'll see some classic Doctors. Now, I will say the basis for this is a little bit less credible, as in, most of them have kind of just been my sort of expectation plot-wise. With this, it's kind of more, there's a lot of rumours that have implied that this is going to happen, and a lot of interviews that have seemingly suggested that this might happen, and I think it will. I personally think it will. There's been so many sort of implications from Chris Chibnall about surprises and callbacks to the past, and we know that something is happening to Jodie's regeneration in that one scene. I can totally see her, for a very brief moment, degenerating into Sylvester or Davison or Colin. I could just totally see it. It's just the sort of thing that I think they would absolutely do. And we know for a fact as well, they were in Cardiff. A bunch of them were in Cardiff around the time this episode was being filmed. And a lot of the rumours about Ace returning, which turned out to be correct, did also feature the idea that classic Doctors would appear in some form or another. Even if maybe it's just sort of archive footage used in a similar way to David the Doctor to make it seem like they're actually there, or something to that effect. I think, whilst this is less likely than Companions, I still have some relative confidence we'll see some form of classic Doctors in this episode, whether it be through degeneration, or any other weird sci-fi explanation, or even just, some sort of archive footage. I think classic Doctors are pretty likely. On the topic of Doctors, my final prediction is that, somewhat unsurprisingly, I think we will see David Tennant's Doctor, whichever Doctor he is playing, at the end of this episode. Now, I know some people are going to say, what about Ncuti? And I'll get to that. I think we will see Tennant predominantly because, when you look at it, Ncuti was filming Sex Education, so he hasn't had a lot of time to do Doctor Who stuff, and we know that the very next things to come from Doctor Who are the 60th anniversary specials led by David Tennant. So it makes all the sense in the world to me to have Jodie regenerate into Tennant, and I know some people have been not so hot on that idea, but to me, I could see them absolutely doing it. It would be that sort of, oh my god, what the hell's going on sort of reveal. The end of Power of the Doctor. Whether we'll get anything more with him than a brief scene, maybe him saying what, I don't know. In terms of Gatwa, I can't see him being in it much for the reasons that I outlined. However, I wouldn't completely rule out the possibility of, in a similar fashion to what I explained with the classic Doctors, I could see maybe Jodie goes into Ncuti, or is going into Ncuti, and then flicks back into David Tennant if the Master has indeed done something with regeneration, or something happens to regeneration in this story, which certainly is implied. But yeah, those are my predictions for Power of the Doctor. Admittedly, it has been difficult because there are still so many unanswered questions about this episode. As much as we do know the basic plot points, there's a lot of stuff that this episode is tackling. I could also go into further detail about, the Rasputin stuff or the bullet train, but to be honest, I don't have much to say on those, as right now, they're basically just concepts. We don't really know much of the context behind those events. So at this point, it is just kind of a wait and see type game. But let me know what you guys think about my predictions in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave it a like, comment down below your thoughts and predictions for Power of the Doctor, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you later.